Founders, welcome back to the 0 to 5,000 podcast, where we obsess over the convergence of human potential and business results. Today, our hosts Drew McClure and Jordan Mitchell have another insightful conversation for you. So let's jump right in.
All right, founders, welcome back to the podcast. Today, we are joined by Phil Case. Phil is the president of Max Connect Digital, where he oversees agency growth, client relationship, strategy, and brand. Previously, he was the managing partner of Fluid Advertising, where he grew the agency from 4 to 35 plus full-time members in a 6-year period. In 2018, he helped launch the Utah Outdoor Association to support the outdoor industry in Utah. He has worked in just about every industry with hundreds of brands and took an international biotech company public on the NASDAQ in 2020. He is an outdoor and adventure travel enthusiast, passionate mountain biker, and backcountry skier, and he's also here today to tell us about his journey. So Phil, thank you for being here, man.
Thanks for having me, Drew.
Awesome. So you have a wide and deep experience of taking multiple companies and growing them and scaling them, which I'm super excited to hear about. But for our audience to get to know you a little bit, where should we start the story?
It's interesting. I went to college thinking I would do international business. And I remember I was in the kind of knee deep in Arabic, learning a totally foreign language and preparing to go be an international diplomat in the Middle East. Wow. And I remember visiting with my, then kind of girl I was interested in, and talking about the future and explaining my vision. And she said, "That sounds amazing. And we are lucky to have people like you. And I wish you the very best." and so then I thought, well, what's a less risky industry? And so I do advertising.
What an amazing and pretty mature response from somebody knowing what they want and what they don't want to be a part of. I'm glad there's people like you that exist. Good luck with that. How did you take that response?
Well, I quickly switched gears, and it ended up working out. So, and it's interesting. I remember being in college trying to figure out what I was going to do, because I graduated with international business, which, kind of, unless you're going to China or the Middle East or have some sort of language, which I didn't, you're not really marketable. And yeah. I started to try to get into finance and was going down a series of rabbit holes, Goldman Sachs and others, and I wasn't getting traction. I remember sitting at a networking event, and the speaker essentially said, "Hey, if you want to get the opportunity, you have to ask for it." And I went up afterward and I said, "I want a job." And he's like, "Well, I guess I have to at least interview you," following up on my advice. And that was Fluid Advertising. That was my first kind of full-time job as I finished up school, began as an intern. 4 years later, the president said, "I'm leaving, and I don't know what the future looks like." And that's when we were at full-time employees, 400,000 in revenue. And the owner of the larger group met with me and said, "What do you want to do here?" And it was either we go big or we go home. And we're either going to blow this up and do it right and create a future for ourselves, or let's pack up shop. And we went out, and I found a fantastic partner who was a decorated creative director in the country. And we continued to grow the agency and put our blood, sweat, and tears over the next years, and grew it to about 5 million. And became the most awarded agency, kind of this side of the Mississippi for several years in kind of our category.
That's wild. Looking back, what were the things that you think were most catalytic to helping that company break from just being at that kind of small, not even small, medium, but small size company to actually really scaling into something serious?
We were scrappy, just like any business of that size. We initially took any type of business, and if you were breathing and had a pulse, we wanted to, take your few $100s. And, very quickly we learned that we needed to be much more strategic, both in our offerings and in kind of the size of clients. And it started with really gaining notoriety with quality of work. And what we were able to do. And, one thing we strive for is to not be a marketing agency to have marketing speak. But when we sat down with business owners, we we understood business challenges. That was one thing that I felt like we did really well. And we continue to do here at Max Connect is I've always said, I'd love to go hire a bunch of MBAs and have them be in digital marketing. Because if you can understand a profit and loss statement and understand how businesses make money, then it's easy to figure out the marketing in terms of what needs to be done. So I think it was being able to understand real business and industry challenges, performing high quality work. And over the course of a couple of years, we began to build a leadership team that kind of took us to that next level. You figure out pretty quickly as a growing entrepreneur that if it's all on you, you can only bet on yourself so far.
Yeah.
And we surrounded ourselves with a remarkable team. And the more diverse the individuals we brought on board, and that became part of that broader vision that we were shaping, they did a lot to allow us to look beyond what we had previously understood our opportunity was. And we began to build things that mattered to us, that mattered to our clients, that motivated individuals to do the extra work late at night, to, kind of burn the midnight oil. And I think it was being able to kind of shift from that being the leadership athlete to becoming the leadership coach. And, beginning to build the next generation of Olympians and coach them and help them be successful. And that was when we hit an inflection point of growth.
There's several things I want to come back to. So hopefully I remember all of them. Hopefully my podcasting skills are good enough. The first is when you said, hey, we used to just take every dollar that came in the door. It's totally normal. Like every business kind of starts that way. Like as long as you're qualified and we think we can help you, sure, let's do business together. But you hit a point where you realize that's not actually going to help us scale at all. We gotta get some niching. We gotta get some strategy. We gotta get some clear, get some niching down somewhere. But that can be kind of a confusing thing if you don't know how to interpret the data. If you're not sure, should I be going for the $100 customer or the $10,000 customer? Should I be going for a small business, large business, this industry, that industry? So what were like the filters that helped you realize like this would be the smart direction for us to go to cut this out and focus more on this?
I mean, one thing I've learned in business over the years is you always go upstream. It's always better, I think, and it's not just about cachet or, bragging rights of working with larger companies, but it is hard to manage thousands and thousands of relationships. And I've seen that done by many, but their growth is always hindered by churn, right? Retention, reputations are tarnished when you're kind of working in that environment. So what guided us is we kind of took a look inside ourselves to say, number one, what are we good at? But number two, what do we love to do? And one of the things that we were passionate about was the outdoors. We all love to be out hunting and fishing and camping and mountain biking and skiing. And so one of the things we looked at, because, based on where we were in Utah, we were filled with, every outdoor recreation one can imagine. That's one of the reasons I started the Outdoor Association, was to kind of coalesce and bring the industry together. But it gave us an opportunity to really be deliberate that when individuals say, well, hey, what makes you different or special compared to the other 120,000 agencies in the United States? And we said, we are the foremost expert in outdoor recreation and in helping reach that audience of consumers. And once you started to say, this is us, you turned away a whole lot of other work.
Yeah.
And we actually grew faster, not slower. It became a real value proposition and differentiator. And so I found that focus and harnessing the power of no and essentialism allows you to actually accelerate at a faster pace in what you are good at. And you actually have greater success, not less success, as you narrow the opportunity field.
What an amazing example. I guess what I'm assuming, because I don't know anything about that industry, is when you had the idea, hey, we all like outdoors, we have a lot of knowledge in it. Did you then have to go look at the market and be like, are there even enough companies in this space that could be our clients for this to be a good fit?
So we did about 300 hours of research.
Wow.
We spent an extensive amount of time looking at 4 or 5 top vertical opportunities, what the projected market growth was over the next 5 years, what brands existed, accessibility to those, and where we could have doors opened. And that research further validated what we had hoped, in that not only is it a fun space, but it's one that you can make money in.
Yeah. So that would be the TAM, right? And kind of business speak, the total addressable market.
Yeah.
How then did you go from, okay, guys, we're excited. We're taking this direction. We've done the research. Now we got to go get a client. Now we actually got to get in front of them, give our pitch. Like, how did that work?
We already had a few in the space. Being able to run a nonprofit that was adjacent to it certainly helped. But every sort of governmental, nonprofit, industry gathering, we were there. I mean, we rubbed shoulders, we drank from the same coolers. We wanted to make sure that we interacted and crossed paths more than our fair share. And we were proactive. We did direct marketing. We created a series of campaigns that we did direct response to, and followed up one-to-one. And so, I mean, we started to pick up steam and clients in that regard. And It's interesting, fast forward to where we're at today. Max Connect Digital started primarily as an automotive focused agency, but pretty quickly figured out, with the ups and downs of the economy, if all you're doing is car sales, and when you have shortages, when you have high interest rates, it can get hard really fast. And so, and it wasn't just me. I've helped develop a few industries here, but it's interesting. We don't just have one vertical, we have 6. And we have senior vice presidents and relationship holders and experts in each one of those verticals that know that book of business extremely well. And so when we go into healthcare, when we go into higher education, we go into home building, we can bring the individual who's seasoned and senior and a veteran and say, here's the individual that manages our entire home building portfolio. He knows it backwards and forwards. And whatever challenge you've encountered, we've been there, done that, and have the case study. And so being able to broaden our base where we're still focused, there's a lot of qualifications we look at for the right size client, and we say no. We have businesses that come to us that would pay us over $1 million a year that we just, don't feel good about, and we turn down. But narrowing that focus, albeit across several verticals, has allowed us to continue, to grow at an amplified state, but still have deep industry knowledge in all the verticals we work in.
Oh man, that's super impressive that you were able to pull that off, right? That it's one thing to know, like, hey, we can't get too diversified. We got to have a deep well of knowledge and focus on this one area, but to also be able to expand it to multiple verticals with still containing that deep knowledge and case and all that stuff is really impressive.
Well, and I'll tell you, it's different. So my last agency, we want to do everything for an outdoor brand. We want to build your website. We want to do the messaging. We want to do the creative. We wanted to be the full service agency and understand that vertical deep. At Max Connect, we just really want to go run your paid digital media. We want to do performance marketing. So we're not going as deep in industry verticals.
So that allows you to actually diversify some.
That's right. And so we've done a different route. So we've gone deep in a particular niche that we're known for across multiple verticals.
Interesting. Now, what was the excitement and decision to come to Max Connect?
We had some changes in ownership. The larger holding company was sold, and I exited that agency in 2019. And that agency has kind of since shut its doors, unfortunately, after my departure and some others. But when I came over to Max Connect, I saw them as kind of a fast-moving ship that already directionally was far ahead from where I had hoped to be. In fact, I'd actually lost some business to Max Connect in the automotive, and I don't like losing. And I had lost a couple of times. And as I had the opportunity to join here, it was, the founders were kind of taking a step back and saying, look, we need somebody to lead growth efforts. And here's a vision of where we're headed. We want to go be at that $100 million mark. And, we feel like we have the vehicle and the manpower, but need someone to help, guide efforts along the way. And so I've been so fortunate to work alongside some incredible people, individuals that are far wiser, maybe a little bit older, and have far more seasoned experience than I do. And we most of our business is nationwide out of the state of Utah. And so we have, individuals that are coast to coast as part of the team, and we travel and bring on some pretty incredible opportunities.
That's amazing. How do you manage a team that's spread out like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. We actually started to ask ourselves that a couple of years ago. It's hard when a lot of our team, the nucleus, is in a corporate office. But as we've developed kind of remote teams and some branches, so to speak, across the country, really good communication. So there's a couple of tools that we have, from Slack to Monday. We do a town hall meeting where agency-wide will kind of give the status of here's what's happening and keeping people in the know. But we also have that relationship team come together at least twice a month, where we can share knowledge, swap stories, because what you don't want to do is have them feel like an island and disconnected. And so we've tried to do as much as we can. We're there in the office multiple times a year. We try to go visit, their areas and be present. But just that they can expect multiple touches per month from headquarters, and checking in and supporting them, and, kind of the rah. It's absolutely critical, because especially if you're in a relationship role, you can get deflated quickly.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's been my experience. The farther the distance, the more opportunity there is for conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
It's like, if I haven't talked to you in a while or seen you face to face, or, we only talk through text or email, it's real easy for drama to build up, or for assumptions that, like, yeah, you don't even care about me anyways, whatever it is. And so from the people I've interviewed on here and my own experience, you guys are doing exactly what you need to do, which is increase frequency of touch. If we're going to be spread out, that's awesome, but we got to increase the frequency of touch, right? So my other question would be, when you mentioned earlier that having the understanding of a real business's needs, right? Almost like that MBA level, understanding what a business is going through, understanding profit loss statement. How does that connect to the work you would be doing as an agency?
I'll give you an example from today. So we're working with the home services client that's fairly large. They're, across probably half the Western United States. And today we were talking in depth about marketing efforts and lead generation and performance. And I finally said, who's the person that's answering the phones and calling people, and trying to set appointments? And they said, oh, it's so-and-so, and she's just right down the hall. And so we had that individual join our meeting for about 20 minutes. We learned more in that 20 minutes about what was happening on the front lines, and that 30% of opportunities weren't closing because, quite frankly, the calendar availability of the sales rep wasn't available. People don't want to meet in their homes often between 9 and 5 because they're busy and at work, right? It's like a repair person wants to come, you got to take the day, you got to take the day off.
Yeah.
So just understanding the nuances of the business of, what does inventory look like in China? How hamstrung will we be to sell through this product because of lack of inventory? And then simultaneously, what does that customer experience look like? And if you can talk to other silos within the business outside of marketing as an agency, you learn volumes that immediately is applicable. And so allowing those conversations to shape the go-to-market strategy and to pivot much more quickly. What you don't want to do is to be the marketer that kind of throws and lobbies leads up over the wall and waits to hear if it, if the target was actually achieved, versus frequently checking in and having continuous dialogue with what could we do better and where do we pivot?
I love it. Okay, let's pivot a little bit. You've got a goal to get this to get this company to 100 million. What are you currently thinking that'll take you from here to there? What are the moves that need to be made or the strategies implemented?
Yeah, it's interesting. That's kind of where I'm grappling with right now. It's interesting. We have new challenges. And I remember in my early years, I used to think, if we could just do, or if we had clients that look like this, or if we could have cash flow be as such, then a lot of my worries and, challenges would go away. And I've only found bigger businesses, different, but bigger challenges. And to be honest, I look forward to it. One of my mantras that a lot of people have is hard is good. And I love a hard day. And yesterday I went home and I felt that I was challenged throughout the day. And I appreciated that. And, you know, as we look ahead and look at the rate of growth that we'd like to and need to be achieving, I mean, it's saying, hey, last year we grew 5 million, but to keep that same rate of growth, we need to be 8 million and then 12 and then 20 million above increase year over year. And so you continue to move the benchmarks higher. And in some ways it gets easier. You have greater efficiency among teams, processes, there's knowledge that's passed, our client size is moving upwards. And so there's a lot of things that happen, but then you begin to realize that we have to work in a more orchestrated fashion as a team. One of our focuses this year is allowing and infusing in strategy how we deliver on behalf of a client across multiple departments that has to be uniform and orchestrated. We want to be able to have playbooks for every single industry that allow the institutional knowledge that our, you know, senior vice presidents have and disseminate that more quickly. And so part of it is how do we build in muscle memory and processes and playbooks that allow us to move at a more rapid pace. And the other thing is we're kind of going from the minor leagues to the major leagues. And it's kind of a wake-up call. You get out in the real world and realize, wow, we're really small potatoes compared to the holding companies and the multi-billion-dollar agencies. And so you start to say, we want to be the agency, you know, for the Atlanta Hawks. And suddenly it's a whole other ballgame. And there's some tremendous opportunities to kind of level up, but it will take the best of you. We have to continue to be able to play with the big dogs. And so you get your foot in the door in a couple of industries. We're working with the largest home builder in America, D.R. Horton. We're working with multiple publicly traded companies. We work with Sitka Gear, which is a hunting brand that just opened a retail store in Atlanta, actually.
All right.
And they're, you know, kind of premier top hunting brand. And so it's continuing to kind of level up across all your verticals and not just leverage the logos and the success to get in the door of the bigger opportunities, but it's leveling up the entire agency.
Yeah.
So we actually have to start acting like $100 million agency even before we are. And we have to think I think we have to think bigger from a visioning perspective and really be able to, you know, leverage the relationships we have currently while kind of forging ahead with new ones.
Was there anything that you noticed you had to do? I mean, you mentioned several things you're already doing differently, but was there anything when you were first getting your foot in the door with some of those major league, as you would describe, opportunities that you all realized, hey, we got to play the game this way if we're going to land this company?
Yeah, I mean, we're doing a whole lot more consumer research than we used to. So before we go into a pitch, we know we're pretty conversational in all things consumer trends, research, cultural insights. We want to make sure before we even have the conversation that we know far more than the next, you know, agency that's trying to pitch them. And so I think being able to, you know, kind of come in fact, it's interesting. We just recently won a pitch, and this doesn't happen very often, but the work that we had presented in the pitch, they said, this is really good work. Will you just turn that campaign on? And that we had speculated, we had done our homework, we knew what we were doing. And the client said, this is better than anything else that we've gotten, even though they hadn't fully directed it. And so I think really being extremely confident coming into an opportunity, you know, infusing a lot more strategy there. And then I think just being ready for a challenge. It gets really uncomfortable when you're in the bigger rooms and the pitches, when you're going up against others that, you know, if we can punch above our weight, it still is uncomfortable because, you know, we're not a heavyweight. And so we don't have the clout or class. And so that idea of just scrappiness, the willingness to maybe do the extra work and, you know, kind of outshine others just through sheer effort is part of what we have to do.
All right. A couple follow-up questions on that. One, I think everybody that's chasing a dream has stood in a room before that you felt like you didn't belong in, right? How do you stand tall in that moment? What for you personally? Where do you put your mind? Where do you put your perspective? How do you stand tall in a moment that you feel like you're the David, not the Goliath?
It's interesting. One of the things I did in the last couple of years is I helped take a diagnostic company that's based in China public on the NASDAQ. That was really uncomfortable. I had to sit in boardroom after boardroom, and I was with the Bank of America, Goldman Sachs, Merrill Lynch, Wells Fargo. These weren't just the local branch guys. I was in New York with the corporate team,
Wow.
sitting in the World Trade Center, sitting in the Empire State Building. Every major hub of the financial sector, I've pretty much been in their offices. And I was speaking to a space of biology that I didn't go to school for biology. I'm not an expert. I don't have a doctorate in it. And yet I had to get very competent quickly, scientifically, because I was the pitch guy. And over the course of multiple years of that experience, I got really comfortable being uncomfortable, being able to think on my feet, to at least know how and where to find the answers. And it wasn't BS. I mean, doing your homework and really getting comfortable with the story that you're telling eventually got me there. And so I think doing that hundreds of times just gives you confidence in about any situation. But I think, coming back to your question, I think knowing that you can have absolute confidence that if you bring on this client, that your team will deliver, that, when you can innovate and be scrappy, and the fact that we feel like we're actually a few steps ahead in others in this space because we can move and innovate and prove the impossible for our clients. There's never such things as red tape. We'll never take no for an answer. It's kind of, Elon Musk like, where there's got to be a more efficient, better, faster way that's less expensive.
Yeah.
And so we've tried to take that approach, and our clients have appreciated it, where when our backs are against the wall, we kind of come out firing on their behalf. And it's interesting. One of our mantras here from day one has been world domination. Which is funny because this agency started in an attic, with two people. And that was day one. It wasn't on, Madison Street or somewhere in New York or in LA, but in an attic, very humbly. And we're now working with some of the major brands in the country.
Yeah, I don't know if you grew up around the same time as me, but it made me think of Pinky and the Brain. Did you ever see that?
Yep.
What are we doing today, Pinky? Or what are we doing today, Brain? Trying to take over the world.
That's right.
How do you pass that down? Especially when you have more than a handful of you. It's easy.
Yeah.
There's a handful of us like-minded. We're all ambitious, scrappy in the attic. You get bigger, you start hiring people, you hire more people. How do you keep people that all have that same level of attitude and scrappiness?
It's hard. Any business will struggle with that. I mean, getting really clear on what your values are. And we've defined some values here that we didn't just make up. We didn't say, that sounds nice, let's put them on the wall. In fact, they're not on the wall. We'd rather kind of have them written, across people's minds and hearts. But the things that have defined us from day one is proving the impossible, embracing the struggle, team above self, and improve the impossible. And we've taken some time with those cultural values, and we hire and we fire based on those values. We need, anytime somebody is coming through the interview process or onboarding, we've recorded videos from our founders that speak to every one of those and how that's been demonstrated year after year in our agency, and what they can expect joining the team. We reward people based on that. We highlight people based on that. And the work that we construct, we try to make sure that it's kind of based on those founding principles. So that being said, I mean, leadership development is a real thing, and we've done a lot of training ourselves. We've brought in outside individuals that are training others how to be leaders. And so it takes a lot of accountability, a lot of coaching, developing growth and career plans. And honestly, a lot of it is when you see that individual that's just right on the cusp of being able to handle a really difficult conversation, it's throwing, him or her right into the fire.
Yeah.
And you're on your own on this, and you got it. And that gets hard, but it's those fire defining moments that allow them to kind of rise from the ashes and say, I did it, or I failed, but at least I learned what I did wrong. And so it's taking off the gloves and, allowing them to come to themselves, just like raising kids. I mean, with my kids, you got to let them fail. They have to bruise the knee, get the cut lip, to then figure out where to, kind of turn and swing the next time. And so I think you got to not be afraid to allow others to fail.
So good. Yeah, that's we didn't even get a chance to talk about this, but that's the work that I do. The business I run is doing leadership development and coaching like that for companies. And one of the things that we talk about is really, as a leader, starting to be able to discern the difference between letting someone drown versus letting somebody learn to swim.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, we don't want to create a culture where we just don't equip people and we set them up to fail and they're drowning and we're not helping them. Right.
No.
But the problem is, many of the times that you're talking about is actually just somebody learning to swim, which is a necessary struggle, some flailing, some awkwardness. But our heart is telling us, oh no, they're in pain. Like, we should swoop in and rescue them.
Mm-hmm.
And we just keep cutting their legs out from under them. And so that is like, it's kind of a hard line sometimes to see. But do you feel like that's an instinct over time that's grown in you, where you're like, I can kind of sense that moment of,
yeah,
you're on your own, buddy. Like, you got this, you got to do this.
No, absolutely. And it's interesting. I do a decent amount of mountain climbing, and kind of, I've climbed some of the tallest mountains in the world over the years. And it's fun. There's an explorer named Roald Amundsen. He's Norwegian. He discovered the Northwestern Passage. He was the first, arguably, to the North Pole and to the South Pole. And in his South Pole expeditions, he talks about how it's that ability to be consistent, I think, with your team, to, even when it's a good day and a hard day, to continue to move forward and allow them to see that, rain or shine, we get to work and get the work done. And it's interesting, he against the British, I mean, the British team, as they were trying to get to the South Pole, would sometimes go 60 miles on a good day, 1 or 2 on a bad day, or just stay in their tents. There was good days for Amundsen, and he and his team would still go just 20 miles, and they would say, well, we're not tired. He would say, it doesn't matter, we're done. And the next
day,
that. It would be horrible weather, he would still go 20 miles, and everyone got out of the sleeping bag and out of the tent. And so I think leading the team with consistency, letting them know that there will be challenges, but as we acclimatize, and one of the things I often talk about is that which we persist in doing becomes easier to do. Not that the nature of the thing has changed, but our power to do has increased.
Yeah.
And it's just that little bit of muscle memory and building, an accumulation of knowledge and of experience muscle over time, that it's just amazing to see somebody, even in 6 months, transform to the shy account manager or not confident digital manager to, being able to step up and deliver some meaningful results. And not everyone does that. It's the good ones that stand out from the pack that are willing to step up. But anyone with humility and a desire, and that just allows for that consistency every day, we can, create something special together with them.
So good. And do you know the name of that book? 'Cause I know I've read it. I got into a kick where I was reading all these different explorer books, and I know I read that one.
So it's called The Last Norwegian.
Yes. Yes.
And the one I'm reading again for probably the third time is Endurance, with Ernest Shackleton. That a whole other, leadership lesson for another day. But yeah, never leave your men and get everyone home safely. Is just remarkable.
I knew nothing about that period of time until I stumbled on to those books, and I didn't even realize until they were educating me, know that was like the age of exploration, right? Like, now we could just fly plane over there and picture, but this was like the last time this whole race, people were in different parts of the world, often dying, or coming back with half the men, or, one of them, I can't remember, one of the ship ones that I read where they got stranded on an iceberg somewhere. And it was just such an amazing, if anyone listening would check out those books, there were so many life lessons, as entertaining as Get Out. So already you're just gonna be entertained reading them, but the leadership lessons, the life lessons that were coming out of those books and those people were so fascinating. So I'm glad you brought that up. I think you might be the first person that have brought that up on the podcast.
Well, one of my favorite sayings is there's no comfort in the growth, or there's no comfort in the growth zone and no growth in the comfort zone.
Yeah.
And so if you want to be comfortable, you shouldn't come work, for me. And that's always been my mantra in life, is that if I want to grow, get outside of yourself and push forward. And I love the risks that were taken in that, age of exploration. And not that we take the same, kind of risk with our lives and mortality, but just that ability to push ourselves just a little bit further. I think most of us would be totally amazed, looking back in a few decades, knowing what we know then, what we should have done as our younger selves, and what we would have done. And so I think it's incumbent on leaders to help others realize that, to pull forward that realization from decades in the future and help them become something greater.
So good. I mean, it's so simple sometimes when we can compare analogies, and it's like we're feeling about this situation like this, but over here in this situation, we see growth like this. And I often think about just like working out, as simple as working out. They're like, hey, what feels heavy today won't in a month. We know that. Like, that's the only reason you go to the gym, is you're like, all right, I'm at this right now, but if I keep lifting the same weight every day, the weight on the bar stays the same, but it feels easier. But we don't feel that way towards improving our, relational resilience, or our speaking ability, or our comfortability. It's like, no, if we just keep doing it, you will get the benefit of the same weight feeling lighter. And then you get to be excited. Like you said, we don't stop to say like, dude, what if I kept going? What if I kept leaning into my edge and kept getting comfortable under that bar? Like, man, what else a month from now, a year from now, 10 years from now would just feel light, would feel normal, that used to feel daunting and overwhelming? Does that make sense?
Well, and it's interesting pulling that away just from the work environment. I have 4 kids, and they're all fantastic in their own right. But one of the things that I want to make sure that, as a dad, I teach them is not only how to work hard, but how to have a business. And so I have a 13-year-old that, isn't the most social kid, but since he was about 6 years to 7 years old, he's been out knocking doors, making money. And this year he started a lawn mowing business. So he went and created flyers and went door to door and signed up clients by himself. And he's fulfills, he collects. I mean, and he'll make a few thousand this summer as a 13.
Wow.
And so but naturally it doesn't come that he's really comfortable in those interpersonal conversations, relationships, but he's learning.
So how do you get him over that hump? That's a big hump if he's already not comfortable with that and he's going door to door knocking.
I think it's a little bit of a push in creating the vision, but I think it's what they're motivated by. It's like, hey, I want to go do mountain biking, and that's expensive to join the team. So mom and dad, I'll pay half if you pay the other half. And so I think it's finding those things that kids are excited about, and or your employees are excited about. What is it that motivates them? And often it's far beyond just money. And I think sometimes there's a great quote from Malcolm Gladwell that says, what really keeps people engaged at a business today, or at a company in today's generation, it's a connection between effort and reward, right? Compensation does matter, but often that reward can be praise. It can be accolades. It can be appreciation, both in front of their peers and privately. Individuals want to be challenged. They want complexity in the business, and individuals, they want autonomy. They don't want to be micromanaged. So get out of the way. And so I found, and that's kind of been how I've governed myself as a leader in a business, is allow people to make their own decisions, help them swing for the fences, to be accountable for when things go good or bad, but support them along the way, and show a lot of appreciation and connecting that when they're working really hard, we're at 100% out of, autocracy. We want to make sure that anyone that's a harder worker than somebody else and they're performing, that they'll move up more quickly in the organization.
I love that. All natural, like intrinsic motivators. My work matters. I'm getting to put myself out there. I'm getting to be justly rewarded if I'm outperforming somebody else and outworking someone else. Like, that's so good, man. I wanted to ask this one question. I've never asked this on the podcast. Tim, do you know who Tim Ferriss is?
I don't.
Tim Ferriss has one of the world's largest podcasts, and he interviews all sorts of brilliant people, but he's become just a fantastic question asker. And so I'm going to take one of his. When he asked this, it put me into an interesting thought exercise for myself. And so let's say next year, 8 million extra is what we're trying to grow by, right? Let's say you grew by 5 million this year. Next year, you're like, hey, to keep on track, like you said earlier, this year we got to grow by 8 million. This is the question. He says, let's imagine it's a year from today. You're back on my podcast and you're here to tell me we didn't do it. You got to say, dude, we fell short. What's the one reason that happened? And he asked that question because it brings an intuition. It takes all the things we're trying to do and it brings up an intuition of like, if we didn't make it, the one real reason why I'm telling you a year from today we didn't grow by 8 million is what?
I mean, I think from an intuition perspective, I mean, to be honest, I think I would say it falls back on me that we weren't working hard and smart enough. I mean, I'm confident that there is no excuse. There's no economic condition. There's no business reason why we couldn't. I think it would come down to we either got off on the wrong foot strategically or we just didn't get the hustle done to get it over the finish line. I mean, I don't think there's an excuse at the end of the day besides we just didn't want it enough.
Yeah, I love that. If you're listening at home, take that question for your business. It's helped me really get clarity on even some like potential blind spots to watch out for. I'll be making my plans and I'm like, hey, at the end of the day, if I didn't make it, like one year it was my instinct was loss of focus. And I hadn't even thought about that. And I was like, you're right. I do kind of chase a lot of different things at the same time. And I bet if I'm not where I want to be next year, it's because I lost focus. And I just kept that in front of me all year. Like, do not lose focus. Stay focused on what's most important, right?
Yeah,
so I asked that for you, but I also asked that for the audience because I remember when he asked it on his podcast, I was like, that is a great way to engage not just the intellect, but the intuition of like, why didn't we make that goal if in the future I'm having to tell you that? So he does the same thing on the flip too. He also does it for if you're here telling me we succeeded, what was the one really thing you did? But thoughts on that? Did I just cut you off?
We had last year, Greg McEwen, if you know Essentialism, came to our offices and spoke to kind of a large group of partners and clients in our agency. And I've read both, Effortless as well as Essentialism. And I very much agree with that. In my life, I used to set goals that were multiple pages for myself personally in the business world. It was so complex that I had multiple, kind of pages I'd go through every month and where I was at in my goal setting. And really all I do now is come up with kind of 2 words that guide me for the year. And what are those words that matter? And this year, my words are simplify and invested. Every week I try to say, what's one meeting I don't need to hold this week? How do I simplify? How do I get time back to do what matters most? And then from an invested standpoint, I want every relationship in my life, any person that I'm spending time with, I want to be all in. I want to be present. I want, my focus where my feet are. And that has helped. I mean, it's helped with my marriage. It's helped with my kids. It's helped in, other, community give back, but especially at work, being able to be invested and give everything that you have for wherever you're at in that moment.
Oh, it's beautiful. It's so funny you said that because I haven't played that game, but I've had 2 words on my head for this whole year, which was relaxed focus. I was in a conversation with the Auburn swing coach and was just asking him like, again, cause I don't coach athletes, but I coach people. And I was like, man, how do you help them? Like they can get in their heads, they can get in a slump and all that stuff. And he went through this whole process, but it ended with my whole goal is to get them to relaxed focus. So when they're in the moment, when they're standing over the ball, they're 2 things that seem opposite. They're focused and relaxed. And he's like, if you can do those at the same time, you will swing free, you trust your body and you accept the results. And I was like, man, just for me, I've been playing a little tight. Business is hard. It feels like a lot of pressure's on you. And I came in this year being like, I think I'm carrying an extra stress. I'm over deliberating on things. And so anyways, I was like, I think relaxed focus is my word. And so you saying yours of invested in simplicity, I think it just helps when we feel like we're doing 100 different things to keep bringing it back to something to ground yourself in. Like at the end of the day, man, show up and embody this. And I want to thank you because the invested part, being where your feet are, you did that today. I felt that from the moment you got on the call. You were fully present with me. You've given me amazing thoughts, wisdom, stories. This has been a fantastic interview. And so I appreciate your time. I appreciate you investing in this.
Hey, so good to be with you. Really enjoyed the conversation, Drew.
Thank you, Phil.
Founders, thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast and hop into our monthly founder email so we can ensure you stay on the edge of peak performance and massive business results.